All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at the Reid Hoffman interview you sent over. It is packed with insights.
Yeah, it really is. Hoffman's such a fascinating figure in the tech world, not just building LinkedIn, but his whole approach.
Right, and I mean, how many people can say they were getting paid to edit Dungeons & Dragons stuff at like 12 years old?
Seriously, that's not your average kid. You can kind of see the entrepreneurial roots right there, right? The organization, the detail stuff.
And being smack dab in Silicon Valley while all that was taking off.
Huge influence, yeah. It's like he had a front row seat to the entire tech boom, shaping his view of what's possible.
And speaking of possibility, that whole contrarian ideas thing he talks about with LinkedIn, that really struck me.
Oh, yeah, it's classic Hoffman. Like, the more people doubted LinkedIn early on, the more he saw it as a sign he was onto something big.
It's like if everyone's nodding along, maybe you're not pushing the boundaries enough, right?
Yeah. Exactly. It's a great lesson for anyone trying to do something new. Like, think about how many people were skeptical about connecting professionally online.
And look at LinkedIn now.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, going against the grain like that, there had to be some serious risks.
Big time. Look at what Airbnb went through. Huge pushback. People not sure about staying in strangers' places, regulations all over.
But both companies, they just kept solving the problem, adapting as things changed.
It's resilience, 100%. And believing in your vision even when others don't, that's key.
Then there's that whole PayPal mafia thing. Can't talk about Hoffman without that. So many successes from that early group, like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, you name it.
It's wild, but it's more than just talent, right? It's the culture Hoffman helped create. Risk-taking, challenging norms, that belief in the internet, even after the dot-com crash.
Like they had this built-in network amplifying each other's ambition.
Totally. Which brings us to pitching. Every entrepreneur needs to master that, right?
Yeah.
Communicating your vision clearly to investors, partners, everyone.
Hoffman talks about starting those conversations early. Don't wait till you're desperate. Be genuine. Show your passion. And he even says, don't shy away from the risks involved.
Yeah, that honesty builds trust. People buy in more when you acknowledge the challenges. Like you have a plan.
Makes you seem more real, more transparent.
Exactly. And you got to nail that value proposition too. What problem are you solving? Why is your solution better? That needs to be crystal clear.
Which leads us to hiring. Hoffman says, and this is a quote, spending a third of your time on recruiting as a founder is not an exaggeration.
Wow. That makes sense, right? Your team, they make or break the whole thing.
And his approach is interesting, prioritizing references over interviews. He's like, a polished presentation can hide someone's actual ability to execute.
He's all about what you've actually done, not just saying the right things. Especially in a startup, you need people who can roll up their sleeves.
He's looking for potential more than just a fancy resume.
That hunger to learn, that's what you can't teach, right? Listeners can apply that to their own careers too, whether you're hiring or being hired.
It's a huge mindset shift, looking for what someone could become, not just what they've done.
For sure. And it's not just skills, right? Hoffman talks about the mindset of successful entrepreneurs, that insane ambition, a clear plan.
Knowing it's a team sport, having that support network.
Oh, and resilience.
Wow.
Every startup hits that valley of shadow, right? He even shares that story about the email from a fellow entrepreneur, really captures the emotional roller coaster.
Sharing that vulnerability is so important, right? Shows you're not alone. Even the biggest names go through it.
It's not always about having the answers. It's about that grit to keep going when it gets tough.
Which brings us perfectly to AI, right? Hoffman's got this really cool take. He calls it amplification intelligence, not just artificial.
Love that. Using AI to boost our own abilities, unlock new things.
Instead of fearing it, see it as a tool to enhance our thinking.
He's all about experimenting with AI tools. Don't just read about them, jump in. He even suggests using it to critique your arguments or get expert perspectives on anything.
It's like having a superpowered research assistant available 24/7.
Exactly. But he's not naive. He talks about the potential downsides, especially with social media. The responsibility platforms have, moderating content, balancing free speech with protecting people.
It's such a complex issue, no easy answers. But these are the conversations we need to be having as technology evolves.
He's optimistic, though, about AI's potential to solve big problems, create new opportunities.
And that leads to his Plan Z idea, right? It resonated with me. Not just a backup, but a strategy for gracefully exiting things when you need to.
Knowing when to pivot, persevere, or move on, that's powerful stuff.
It helps you navigate uncertainty, make decisions that actually align with your goals.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite Hoffman quotes, just because you don't have a 100% chance of succeeding doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
It's a call to action. Embrace the risk, Go after those dreams. Even if you don't hit every target, you'll learn and grow along the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, welcome back. We're diving back into that Reid Hoffman interview, and there's so much more to unpack. One thing that really stuck with me was his take on ambition, like the intense kind, and how it often comes with trade-offs.
Yeah, it's something we don't always talk about, right? We hear the hustle 2 soar 7 stories, but what's the real cost?
Exactly. And Hoffman actually contrasts his approach to, say, Elon Musk's. He admires Musk's dedication, but acknowledges it comes with a different set of priorities, maybe sacrifices in personal life.
Like there's no single success formula, what works for one person.
Might be totally wrong for another, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out what matters most to you, making choices that fit your values.
And those choices can change too, right? It's that balance, ambition versus those relationships that bring joy, fulfillment.
So true. And it's not just personal. It applies to business, too. Like when Hoffman talks about global competition.
Oh, yeah, he's very clear about that. The intensity from Silicon Valley, from China.
So what's the advice for entrepreneurs elsewhere, right? Feeling overwhelmed by that?
Well, he suggests focusing on niche markets where that blitz scaling isn't as crucial. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, rapidly expanding to dominate, like ASAP, big in Silicon Valley, but...
Not always the best move, especially against established players.
Right. Hoffman also says, leverage what's unique to your area. Maybe it's craftsmanship, specific industry expertise. Play to those strengths.
Be adaptable, strategic.
Okay.
It's not just competing, it's collaborating, learning from across borders.
Which kind of leads to something Hoffman's like really passionate about, friendship. He even mentioned wanting to write a book on it for over 30 years.
That's awesome. Why do you think it's so important to him, especially with entrepreneurship?
I think it goes back to that human connection, the support system. Building a company, it can be lonely, tough.
Having those friends who get it makes a huge difference.
Not just emotional support either, right? They challenge you, offer new perspectives, celebrate the wins.
Friendships are valuable on so many levels, personally and professionally.
Totally. Which brings us back to something we touched on earlier, those potential downsides of AI, particularly on social media.
Yeah, the whole content moderation thing. Tricky balance, right? Free speech versus protecting people.
It's tough. AI is a big part of it now, algorithms flagging stuff, but they're not perfect.
Definitely needs human oversight, ethical considerations, all that.
Huge responsibility for those platforms. Like, how do you foster healthy dialogue without letting harmful stuff run wild?
Reminds us that technology is a tool. How we use it, that's on us.
Exactly. It can't just blindly embrace shiny new things. Got to think about the consequences.
Which I think connects to what Hoffman says about the nature of work itself, always evolving.
Oh, yeah. He's big on lifelong learning, adapting as things change.
What's his advice for navigating that, especially with tech always advancing?
He pushes for that growth mindset, believing you can always learn new skills no matter your age.
It's not about clinging to one job forever. Be open to possibilities. Actively seek out new knowledge.
He also talks about networking, building relationships outside your usual bubble. You never know where the next opportunity comes from.
Stay curious, stay connected. I love that. Switching gears a bit, that blitzscaling discussion earlier, very interesting how Hoffman cautions against always aiming for super fast growth.
Yeah, we're so conditioned to think faster's better, but...
He points out it can lead to losing focus, sacrificing quality for quick wins.
Like building a rocket, he says. Got to be precise, methodical, can't just rush it.
It's a reminder that there are different ways to succeed. Sometimes it's not about being the biggest, but the best.
And that brings us to something close to Hoffman's heart. Education. He's really pushing for reform to better prepare students for, the future we're talking about.
He's critical of the traditional model. Too much rote memorization, standardized tests.
He wants it to be more personalized, experiential. Kids developing critical thinking, problem solving, that love of learning.
And skills that actually matter. NLW, right? Coding, design thinking, communication.
And it never stops. Lifelong learning, that's huge for him. Education isn't just what happens in school, it's ongoing.
Always be growing, always be seeking new knowledge, adapting to the world.
Couldn't agree more, which actually leads perfectly to the power of curiosity itself.
Hoffman embodies that, right? Always asking questions, exploring new ideas, challenging the norm.
It's what drives him to spot opportunities others miss, constantly innovating.
So how do we cultivate more of that in our own lives?
Hoffman says, start by asking more questions. Don't accept the status quo, seek out different perspectives, information that challenges your assumptions.
And get out of your comfort zone. Take a class, read something totally new, talk to someone with a different background.
All those things can spark that curiosity, open up new possibilities.
It's about that openness to learning, growing, no matter where you are in life.
Powerful stuff, especially in our world where things change so fast.
I'm curious, what's resonated most with you from this deep dive so far?
It's that emphasis on relationships, the meaningful ones. Easy to get caught up in the hustle, forget about the people who matter.
Totally. Success isn't just about achievements. It's about that fulfilling life, surrounded by people who lift you up.
It's about more than just reaching the destination. It's about who you have with you on the journey. We've covered so much ground already, from Hoffman's early days to AI to the future of work, but there's still more to explore.
All right, welcome back for the final part of our Reid Hoffman deep dive. We've covered a ton from his early days to AI, but there's still some really good stuff to dig into.
I agree. I'm especially interested in his thoughts on leadership. He's been on both sides, founder and investor, so he's got this unique view.
He's big on building trust, empowering your team, creating that culture where people feel comfortable taking risks, challenging things.
And clear communication, right?
Yeah.
Transparency about the vision, the goals, even the tough stuff.
Being adaptable, too. The world changes so fast, leaders need to be able to shift gears, adjust their approach as they go.
Always be learning. That's another one. He sees the best leaders as constantly seeking out new knowledge, new ways of thinking.
He even suggests using AI for leadership development, like to help identify your strengths and weaknesses, give personalized feedback, even simulate different scenarios.
Wow, that's interesting. Using tech to level up your leadership skills.
But beyond the skills, the strategies, he talks about leading with purpose, right? The best leaders are driven by making a positive impact, not just profit.
He calls it transformational leadership, inspiring people to work towards something bigger than themselves.
He wants leaders to think about their legacy. What do they want to be remembered for? What kind of mark are they leaving on the world?
It's a powerful question. Makes you really examine your values, make sure your actions are aligned with them.
And it all ties back to his whole philosophy, that optimistic realism. Being aware of the challenges, but still believing in our ability to overcome them, to create a better future.
He sees technology as this tool for good, but it's not magic, right? It's on us to use it wisely, ethically, so everyone benefits.
It's a message of hope, of empowerment. We don't have to just sit back and watch things happen. We can actively shape the future we want.
Powerful stuff. And I think that's a great note to wrap up on. Reid Hoffman's insights, they really push you to think differently, embrace new ideas, lead with a purpose.
Be curious, be adaptable, never stop learning. I hope everyone listening has found this deep dive as insightful as I have.
And remember, even if you don't have a 100% guarantee of success, don't let that stop you from going after your dreams, making a difference in the world. Until next time.